Lindenwood head coach Jed Stugart. The team will open the season a return game at St. Thomas. That is Thursday night, 6 p.m. Central Time. Coach, just thoughts on your team as we enter the first week of the 2025 season.
Thoughts on my team, I'll tell you Friday. You know, we're all in that mode where you got to go play a game to see where we're at. But I do really like this team. I always try to pay attention. I think it all starts in winter workouts, really, even before spring ball. And I've just noticed, I feel like after last year, we felt like we ended on a positive note in the second half of our season. We had good wins and we had some close battles, and we had a overtime loss to a playoff team in our league to end the season, which was a tough one to lose. But it was the difference between the year before not being as competitive to going into having to lose in overtime was hard. But I think that triggered our team going into the winter with just kind of a little bit of a frustrating mindset of in a good way of like, hey, I'm glad they weren't happy with that loss and stuff, but that it kind of got them hungrier. And it just kind of followed into spring football. I think number one, this is the first time in a couple of years we've had a veteran quarterback coming back that's had some playing experience and was our starter last year. And I think that also helps confidence wise in your offense, having a guy that, when Nate got here last year, it was, kind of late in July. He had to start learning stuff quickly and only had a camp to learn our offense. And it took a few games for him to really get in the flow of things. And now he comes back as a veteran guy that knows our offense and has had a spring with these guys and a really good summer with them. And I've just felt a little bit more confidence offensively. Not that we've arrived, but I think it's just more of a confidence in our offense. And although, we do have some young faces, but I really like, these guys that we've recruited. We haven't just loaded our team up in the transfer portal. We've recruited and developed, and now to see some of these young guys moving into some of these starting positions that we think are very capable. And in some cases, we might be a little better in some spots than last year. So you put all that together, and then in the off season, I think there's been another energy. I think having it be official that's been the talk in the media and everything about, the question I've been getting the most is, hey, you're eligible for the playoffs. And I said, yeah, we're eligible for them, but there's a lot of stuff you got to do to even have a shot to get there. But I think just the fact that our guys feel like that can be an extra incentive as well has created another type of energy that I think's been very positive. So a lot of good stuff. I like there's some maturity on this team that maybe we didn't have as much in certain spots last year. And we really didn't have a real immature team last year. I just think I just feel some growth in this team. So now we just got to go see Thursday how we play and then kind of assess from there.
Thanks, Coach. Ben from Metro Sports St. Louis has a question. Go ahead, Ben.
What's up, Ben?
Hi, Coach. Just to follow up on what you just said, are there any particular players or position groups that you're particularly excited to kind of see what they can do Thursday, that had maybe a particularly good camp that you're excited to see what they do on the field?
Well, starting offensively, I covered Nate, and even Robert Pops Battle, our other quarterback too. I mean, I really liked his off season and his camp. So I feel like we got two really good quarterbacks there. Feel like there's going to be a lot of times where you're going to see, good chance we see Pops a little bit as well this year, and so you start with that position. But I think one of the position groups I'm really excited to see is our receiver core. All the questions and conversations I've had in the off season is, what do you guys do now that Jeff Caldwell's gone? And for obvious reasons, when you have a guy like Jeff Lee, he was a playmaker. But I think on the positive side, I think last year, on Sundays you'd come in and watch a game from the day before, and I think a lot of times when you have such a playmaker like Jeff on the field, sometimes the quarterback's eyes goes to that person a lot, and we had very capable receivers running around. And I think Nate seeing that in the spring in camp, when we have very good depth in our receiver core, we have guys that can make plays in our receiver core that I see the ball being dispersed more to different receivers and things like that. So I think that's an area that I'm really excited to see how they come together. And I think we lost 4 of our 5 offensive linemen starters. Now we've got some younger faces there, but size, talent, things like that, I don't know that we really drop off. I think that's another group that has to answer some questions, but I'm just really excited about that group of 5 up front, stepping into some. We lost an NFL offensive lineman. We lost another kid that had some NFL looks as well. So you got to replace 2 really good players up front. And then our running back room's pretty solid, with Steve Hall, but you think of Jared Rhodes and Fresh Woods, freshman that we got in here. Various Fresh is what everybody calls him, but excited to have him as adding it to our running back room. And Bryce, another guy that's been on our room. I feel like we got good depth at the running back spot. So a little bit more veteran offensively, but flipping over the defensive side, I'm really where we got decimated last year with injuries was in our linebacker core, and especially kind of in that middle of the season, we were running out of guys, and to see we got some depth at the linebacker spot. It gives us a little bit more confidence. Our front 7, basically our defensive line, our linebacker core, is a little deeper and a little bit more veteran leadership there. So I'm excited having Kobe McClendon back, Tajay, our 2 ends that have had a lot of reps and a lot of veteran leadership there, to kind of balance out some of the youth that we have inside. So that's exciting. Again, another area defensively is where we graduated a lot of guys and lost a lot of guys, but we've got good youth coming up, and some I think a big test for us, we got to see kind of how our secondary, with a lot of new faces and good talent, but some new faces, maybe some first opportunities to get out on the field, kind of see how they respond on Thursday. I'm excited to kind of see that, but I feel good where we're at.
Coach, thoughts? You played St. Thomas last year, right? So, and they also just finished the reclassification to Division I. Is there any benchmarks or comparisons you can take? I realize you're different programs, you're coming from different backgrounds, but a fellow team and see where you are now in the process now that reclassification's over, or am I just totally reaching there? Is there anything you can take from that?
No, in fact, Glenn and I talked a lot through these 3 years. We've known each other a long time. Our history goes clear back to the North Central Conference back when you were at UNC with me. So we've known Glenn. I've known him a long time. So it's there. I think we're different conferences, and obviously, there's we, other than last year and this year, probably the only times that we play each other, here from last year and this year, but we've talked a lot about through the transition. I think there's some similarities. Obviously, they jumped from D3 to D1. They had a little longer road to hoe a little bit with the rules there, and so. But I know him. Last year we've kind of not even really referenced a lot about last year. We had a game where we hit on about everything went right in that game. That's something that we don't even we throw those away fast because he's a really good football coach. He's replaced with some good players at the quarterback position, the running back position. So a lot of those guys have played us, but there's a bunch of new faces that haven't played us last year. So we don't look at anything about last year. But no, you're not reaching there. I think a lot of us coaches that have been through this, you go to other coaches about what they've tried to pick their brain on things because it is you've got to figure out a strategy to make it through an elevation of levels. and how the best way to do that. And Glenn's been a good guy. We always met at the convention, for the last 5 years, just to have a cup of coffee and talk a little bit about it. So he's been really helpful through that, and I think to each other.
And what I'll leave you with this. What can you expect from them this year, their team, compared to what they did last year?
Well, I know him well enough. I imagine since we're the first game, I imagine, I can picture, the score being printed off and posted up in every locker, all summer, all spring, all fall camp. I promise you that's been talked a lot about, that I just know him well enough that they're going to be prepared. He's a really good ball coach. And then we're going to their place. I reminded our team last year, even though we had like I said, we kind of hit on all cylinders, but on the other hand, Northern Iowa went up there, played them, and snuck out of there with a 17-14 win, but it was tied all the way. And that's a Missouri Valley team that went to their place and really, really had a hard time. So going on the road, playing at their place, it's a beautiful facility, beautiful campus. You got to overcome the road game, obviously. So there's enough challenges there for us to, we got to take it one play at a time and not even reflect anything that happened last year.
Well, Coach, appreciate your time as always. Best of luck on Thursday. We'll talk to you again this time next week.
Thanks, Kyle. Good to see you, Ben. Appreciate you.